My name is David Chen, I'm 58 years old, and for the past 30 years I've been a corporate attorney specializing in estate planning and trust management in Seattle, Washington. My wife Catherine passed away 2 years ago from ovarian cancer at the age of 56, and in the months that followed her death, I made a decision that saved me from the biggest betrayal of my life. I kept my mouth shut about the money. Catherine and I had built something extraordinary together. We met in law school back in 1989, married in 1992, and spent 3 decades building not just a life, but an empire. While I focused on my legal practice, Catherine had an absolute genius for technology investments. In 1998, she convinced me to invest our savings into a little startup that was revolutionizing online retail. That company was Amazon. In 2004, she did it again with a social media platform nobody believed in yet. And in 2011, she went all in on cloud computing infrastructure. By the time she died in October 2023, our portfolio was worth just over $35 million. We had one son together. Marcus. He was born in 1995, making him 28 years old when his mother died. Catherine and I had given him everything, a private school education, a full ride at USC, a car for graduation, and a generous trust fund that paid him $4,000 a month starting when he turned 25. We weren't trying to make him soft, we were trying to give him options. But somewhere along the way, Marcus had become someone I barely recognized. After Catherine's diagnosis in January 2023, Marcus visited exactly 4 times during her 9-month battle with cancer. 4 times. He lived in Los Angeles, a 2-hour flight away, and he came to see his dying mother 4 times. The excuses were always the same: work was crazy, his girlfriend needed him, he had important meetings. Catherine never complained. She'd just smile weakly and say, "He's young, David. He's building his life. Don't be too hard on him." I was there every single day. I held her hand through every chemotherapy session. I changed her bandages. I carried her to the bathroom when she was too weak to walk. I read to her when she couldn't sleep. And in those final weeks, when she knew the cancer had won, Catherine held my hand and made me promise something. "Don't tell Marcus about the full extent of our assets right away," she whispered on September 28, 2023, just 3 weeks before she died. "Wait and see what kind of man he's become. If he steps up, if he honors my memory, if he shows you he's worthy, then you'll know. But if he doesn't, David, promise me you'll protect what we built." I promised her. And on October 19, 2023, Catherine passed away peacefully in our bedroom with me beside her. Marcus arrived the next day. The funeral was on October 25, 2023. It was a beautiful service at St. James Cathedral, packed with Catherine's friends, colleagues, and the countless people whose lives she'd touched. I'd spent days working with the funeral director on every detail because that's what you do when you lose the love of your life. You make sure her goodbye is perfect. Marcus showed up 15 minutes late with his girlfriend, Amber. I'd met her twice before. She was 26, blonde, worked as an influencer, according to Marcus, and had the kind of fake concern on her face that didn't quite reach her eyes. During the service, I caught Marcus checking his phone 3 times. At the reception afterward, he spent most of his time in the corner on a phone call, leaving me to greet the mourners alone. As people were leaving, Marcus finally approached me. "Hey Dad, we need to talk about Mom's estate. When's the will reading?" I looked at my son, at this stranger wearing my son's face, and remembered Catherine's words. "There's no formal reading," I said. "But don't worry, everything's handled. Your mother made sure you'll be taken care of." "What does that mean exactly?" Amber chimed in, her hand possessively on Marcus's arm. "It means the family is secure," I replied. "Marcus, your trust fund will continue as it has been. Nothing changes there." I could see the disappointment flicker across his face, quickly masked. $4,000 a month isn't exactly life-changing, Dad. It wasn't meant to replace working, I said. It was meant to supplement it. Your mother and I always believed you'd make your own way. Marcus left the next day. He didn't help pack up Catherine's things. He didn't ask if I needed anything. He didn't even stay to visit her grave one more time. He flew back to Los Angeles with Amber, and I was alone in the house where Catherine and I had spent 26 years together. The first month after Catherine's death was a blur. I threw myself into work, handling client estates while trying to ignore the gaping hole in my own life. Marcus called twice, both times asking about when he'd receive his inheritance. I told him the estate was complex and still being settled, which was technically true. Catherine had been brilliant but complicated in her financial arrangements, with multiple trusts, offshore accounts, and investment vehicles that required careful documentation. Then came Thanksgiving. I'd invited Marcus up to Seattle, hoping maybe we could start healing together, start being a family again. He declined. Amber's family does this big thing in Malibu, Dad. Can't miss it. Maybe Christmas. Christmas came. Same story. Amber had planned a trip to Aspen. Next year will be different, I promise, Marcus said over the phone. By February 2024, 4 months after Catherine's death, I'd heard from Marcus exactly 6 times. Always about money. Never about how I was doing. Never about Mom. Just money. That's when the first weird thing happened. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, I got a call from my accountant, Richard Shaw. Richard had been handling my personal finances for 15 years and was one of the few people who understood the full scope of our wealth. "David, I need to ask you something sensitive," Richard said. "Did you give Marcus permission to request information about Catherine's estate?" I sat up straighter in my home office. "What do you mean?" "He called my office yesterday claiming he needs detailed documentation of all assets for tax purposes. Said you'd authorized him to gather the information." I hadn't. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. I said I'd need written authorization from you first." He got pretty insistent, actually. Almost aggressive. After I hung up with Richard, I sat there staring at Catherine's photo on my desk. Something was wrong. Very wrong. I decided to do something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. His name was James Reeves, a former FBI agent who now ran a boutique investigation firm in Seattle. I met him on February 20th, 2024, in his downtown office. "I need you to look into my son," I said, the words tasting like poison in my mouth. "I need to know what he's really up to." James didn't judge. "What specifically are you looking for?" "I don't know. That's the problem. But my wife just died, and suddenly my son is trying to access information about her estate behind my back. I need to understand why." James took the case. What he found over the next 3 weeks shattered whatever remained of my heart. The report came on March 15, 2024. James and I met at a quiet coffee shop in Capitol Hill, away from my office, away from anywhere I might be recognized. "David, I'm going to be straight with you," James said, sliding a thick folder across the table. "Your son is in serious financial trouble, and he's been lying to you about almost everything." The folder contained phone records, financial documents, social media screenshots, and surveillance photos. As I flipped through it, my hands started shaking. Marcus wasn't working at the tech startup he'd told us about. He'd been fired from that job in August 2023, a month before Catherine died. He'd never told us. Instead, he'd been living off his trust fund and Amber's income, except Amber wasn't exactly a successful influencer. She had 8,000 followers and made maybe $500 a month from sponsorships. What she was really good at was spending money. The two of them had racked up over $180,000 in credit card debt. They'd leased a $3,500 a month apartment in West Hollywood they couldn't afford. Marcus had a leased BMW, Amber had a Mercedes, both with payments over $1,000 a month. They ate at expensive restaurants 4 nights a week, took trips to Vegas, bought designer clothes. All on credit, all sinking deeper into debt. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the text messages James had obtained through his sources. Messages between Marcus and Amber starting just days after Catherine's funeral. October 27, 2023, Marcus to Amber, "Finally talked to Dad about the money. He's being cagey. My mom was loaded though, I know it. She had that Amazon stock from forever ago. We're talking millions. October 28, Amber to Marcus, you need to push harder, baby. We need that inheritance. The Amex bill is due and I'm maxed out everywhere. November 3, Marcus to Amber, Dad says the estate is complex and being settled. Bullshit. He's hiding something. I bet he's trying to keep it all for himself. November 15, Amber to Marcus, what if you just contest the will? My cousin's a lawyer, he says you have rights as the only child. There were dozens more. Hundreds. Every conversation was about the money. About what they could buy. About how Marcus deserved his fair share. About how I was probably manipulating things to cut him out. Not once, not in a single message, did Marcus mention missing his mother. Not once did he ask if I was okay. It was just money, money, money. James cleared his throat. There's more. On March 8, your son met with an attorney named Bradley Morrison. Morrison specializes in will contests and estate litigation. I felt cold. What? Marcus is exploring his options to challenge whatever your wife left behind. He doesn't know the full extent of the estate, but he knows it's substantial. And from what I can gather, he's preparing to sue you for access if you don't voluntarily disclose everything soon. I closed the folder. My son, my only child, the boy I'd raised, the man whose diapers I'd changed and whose scraped knees I'd bandaged and whose college essays I'd proofread, was preparing to sue me over his dead mother's money. Thank you, James, I managed to say. Send me your final invoice. That night, March 15, 2024, I sat in Catherine's favorite chair in our living room and I cried. Not the quiet, dignified tears I'd shed at her funeral, but deep, gasping sobs that came from somewhere primal. I'd lost my wife to cancer, and now I was losing my son to greed. But Catherine had been right. She'd known. Somehow, in those final weeks, she'd seen what I'd been too blind to see. Marcus wasn't the man we'd hoped he'd become. And she'd protected me by making me promise to wait. I dried my eyes. I was done grieving. It was time to plan. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new unreleased stories here every day. Each one more intense than the last. I spent the next 2 months preparing. As an estate attorney, I knew every trick, every loophole, every strategy. I'd spent 30 years helping clients protect their assets from ungrateful heirs, and now I was going to use every bit of that knowledge. First, I contacted Catherine's estate planning attorney, Margaret Wu. Margaret had worked with us for years and was aware of Catherine's concerns about Marcus even before she got sick. Margaret, I need to execute Catherine's contingency plan, I said when we met on March 20, 2024. Margaret nodded. She'd been expecting this. You're certain? I showed her James's investigation report. She read it in silence, her expression darkening. Okay. Let's do it. Catherine's will was actually a masterpiece of legal engineering, something we'd refined over the years as our wealth had grown. On paper, it appeared to be a standard testamentary will leaving her assets to me as the surviving spouse, with provisions for Marcus. But buried in the language were conditional clauses that could be activated based on specific circumstances. The key clause was this: if the executor, me, determined that any beneficiary had demonstrated conduct inconsistent with the values and wishes of the decedent, that beneficiary's inheritance could be redirected to a charitable trust with the beneficiary receiving only limited interest payments. I had all the documentation I needed. Marcus's attempts to circumvent me and access estate information. The text messages showing his mercenary motives. His abandonment of his mother during her illness. His neglect of his father during grief. And now, his consultation with a litigation attorney. But I didn't activate it yet. I wanted Marcus to show me exactly who he'd become. On March 25, 2024, I called my son. It was the first time I'd initiated contact since Christmas. Marcus, I think it's time we talked about your mother's estate. Can you come up to Seattle next weekend? There was a pause. Finally. Yeah, Dad, I can make that work. This weekend? April 1st. Let's say Saturday morning, 10 a.m. at the house. I'll be there. April Fool's Day. Catherine would have appreciated the irony. Marcus arrived on March 31st, the evening before our meeting. He'd booked a hotel downtown rather than stay at the house. Just easier, he'd texted. Translation: he didn't want to deal with me any longer than necessary. On April 1st, 2024, at exactly 10 a.m., Marcus rang the doorbell. I opened it to find him standing there with Amber and another man I didn't recognize. "Dad, this is Bradley Morrison," Marcus said, not even bothering with pleasantries. "My attorney. Hope you don't mind, but given the complexity of Mom's estate, I wanted professional representation at this meeting." I smiled. "Of course. Please, come in." I led them to the dining room where I'd set up folders for each person. Margaret Wu was already seated at the table, along with Richard Shaw, my accountant, and a third person Marcus didn't recognize. "What's all this?" Marcus asked, suddenly wary. "You wanted to discuss your mother's estate," I said calmly. "So let's discuss it. Please, sit." They sat. Bradley Morrison was already scanning the room with the predatory alertness of a litigation attorney sensing a setup. "Marcus," I began, "before we get into the details, I want to ask you something. In the 5 months since your mother died, have you been happy with how I've handled things?" He exchanged a glance with Amber. "I mean, it's been kind of frustrating not knowing what's going on. Have you felt I've been dishonest with you?" "I wouldn't say dishonest, but not exactly transparent either." "And you felt that warranted hiring Mr. Morrison here to explore litigation options against me?" The room went silent. Marcus's face flushed red. "How did you? I'm an estate attorney, Marcus. Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" I opened the folder in front of me. "But let's move forward. You want to know about your mother's estate. Here it is." I slid documents across the table to Bradley Morrison. "This is Catherine Chen's last will and testament, properly executed and notarized. As you'll see, it leaves the entirety of her separate property estate to me, her surviving spouse, with a provision for Marcus receiving a specific bequest." Marcus leaned forward. "What's the bequest?" $50,000, I said. "Paid out in annual installments of $10,000 over 5 years, in addition to the continuation of your existing trust fund." The color drained from Marcus's face. $50,000. That's it? Mom was worth millions. Your mother's assets, accumulated during our marriage, were community property under Washington state law. They passed to me as the surviving spouse. The $50,000 was her specific bequest to you. That's bullshit. Amber exploded. She was his mother. He deserves half at least. Bradley Morrison put a hand on Marcus's arm, his attorney instincts kicking in. "Mr. Chen, with respect, community property rules aside, there are questions of undue influence and fiduciary duty. If Mrs. Chen was under duress or not of sound mind, Mrs. Chen executed this will in March 2023, 3 months after her diagnosis and 6 months before her death," Margaret Wu interrupted, her voice cold and professional. "She was examined by 2 independent physicians who certified her mental capacity. She met with me alone, without her husband present, on 3 separate occasions to review and confirm her wishes. I have detailed notes from each meeting. And I have video recording of the will execution, which while not required in Washington state, was done specifically to prevent the kind of challenge you're contemplating, Mr. Morrison." Margaret slid a flash drive across the table. "That contains the video. You'll see Catherine Chen, fully competent, clearly articulating her wishes. Would you like me to play it?" Bradley's jaw tightened. He knew when he was beaten on the will validity front. "What about the valuation of the estate?" Surely Marcus has a right to full disclosure of the assets. Of course, I said. I slid another document across. This is a complete accounting of Catherine's separate property at the time of her death. As you can see, after payment of final medical expenses, funeral costs, and estate taxes, the bequest of $50,000 represents the entirety of her separate estate. Marcus grabbed the document, his hands shaking. This says she only had $125,000 in separate property. That's impossible. She had millions. I know she did. Your mother had substantial investments, I confirmed. However, those were held as community property in both our names. Upon her death, they passed to me by right of survivorship. They were never part of her probate estate. So you get everything. Marcus's voice was rising. $35 million, all to you. I raised an eyebrow. Interesting number. Where'd you get that figure? He'd slipped. Amber grabbed his hand, but it was too late. You've been investigating my finances, I said softly. Trying to figure out what you think you're owed. Let me save you some trouble, Marcus. Yes, the total value of the assets Catherine and I accumulated over 30 years of marriage is approximately $35 million. And yes, as the surviving spouse in a community property state, now own all of it. We'll contest this, Bradley Morrison said, but there was no conviction in his voice. He could see the paper trail was airtight. You could try, Margaret said. But I should warn you, there are provisions in Mrs. Chen's will addressing frivolous litigation. Any beneficiary who challenges the will without probable cause forfeits their bequest entirely. Marcus would lose even the $50,000. This is insane. Marcus stood up, his chair scraping loudly. Dad, she was my mother. I'm your son. How can you do this? I stood up too. For the first time in months, I felt a white-hot anger burning through the grief. How can I do this? Marcus, your mother died 5 months ago. You've called me 6 times. 6. Every single time about money. You didn't come to Thanksgiving. You didn't come to Christmas. You couldn't be bothered to visit your mother's grave even once. You were too busy spending money you didn't have, running up debt, living beyond your means. I pulled out James's investigation report and threw it on the table. I know about the credit card debt. I know about you losing your job and lying about it. I know about every text message you and Amber sent planning how you'd spend your inheritance before your mother was even cold in the ground. Marcus's face went white as he recognized some of the printed text conversations. You investigated me. Your mother asked me to wait and see what kind of man you'd become, I said, my voice breaking. She knew, Marcus. Even dying, she knew you weren't coming to see her out of love. She could see who you were becoming, and it broke her heart. But she loved you anyway, and she asked me to give you a chance to prove her wrong. You failed, I continued. Every test, every opportunity, you failed. You couldn't even pretend to care about anyone but yourself. Amber stood up, her face twisted with rage. You spiteful old man. You're just jealous that Marcus has his whole life ahead of him and you're stuck alone. Get out, I said quietly. Dad, Marcus started. Get out of my house. They left. Bradley Morrison actually apologized on his way out, whispering, I didn't know the full situation. I'm sorry. But Marcus, Amber, and their anger stormed out without another word. After they left, I sat down heavily. Margaret put a hand on my shoulder. Are you okay? No, I admitted. But I will be. The next few weeks were ugly. Marcus tried calling, texting, even showing up at my office. Each time, the message was the same, I was being unfair, Mom would have wanted him to have more, he was my son and deserved better. Not once did he apologize. Not once did he acknowledge his behavior. It was all about what he deserved, what he was owed, what I was keeping from him. On April 15, 2024, Bradley Morrison formally withdrew as Marcus's counsel. Apparently Marcus had stopped paying him. On April 20th, Amber left Marcus. She'd seen there was no inheritance coming and found a new boyfriend within a week, some crypto bro with actual money. Marcus called me on April 22nd, drunk and crying. "Dad, Amber left me. I'm drowning here. I need help." "What kind of help?" I asked. "Money, Dad. I need money. I'm $200,000 in debt and I can't pay my rent." "Get a job, Marcus. I've been trying. It's hard out there. Your mother had stage 4 cancer and went through 9 months of chemotherapy, Marcus. That was hard. Getting a job is just what adults do." I hung up. But I didn't leave him completely helpless. That wasn't who Catherine and I were. On May 1st, 2024, I had Margaret contact Marcus with an offer. The offer was simple: I would pay off all his debts, give him a one-time payment of $100,000 to get back on his feet, and increase his trust fund to $6,000 a month. In exchange, he had to meet certain conditions. First, he had to get a job and maintain employment for at least 1 year. Any job, I didn't care what. Second, he had to attend therapy to address whatever was broken in him. Third, he had to volunteer at least 10 hours a month at a cancer support charity, preferably one supporting ovarian cancer patients and their families. And fourth, he had to write his mother a letter, to be placed at her grave, acknowledging what he'd failed to do while she was alive. If he completed all 4 conditions and maintained them for 1 year, we could discuss his future inheritance. If he didn't, he'd get the original $50,000 bequest and nothing more. Marcus took 3 days to respond. On May 4th, 2024, he accepted. I'm not going to lie and say it fixed everything overnight. The first few months were rocky. Marcus got a job as a sales associate at a tech store in Culver City, something he clearly considered beneath him. He started therapy but complained about it constantly. The volunteering he did grudgingly at first. But something started to change. In August 2024, 4 months into the program, Marcus called me and actually asked how I was doing. We talked for an hour. He told me about a woman he'd met at his volunteer work, a nurse whose husband had died of cancer. They'd been talking, and she'd helped him understand what caregivers go through. "Dad, I had no idea what you went through with Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry. I'm so fucking sorry." It was the first real apology I'd received. In September 2024, Marcus asked if he could come visit Mom's grave with me. We drove there together from the airport, and I watched as he knelt down and read the letter he'd written to her. He sobbed as he read it, apologizing for not being there, for being selfish, for letting her down. It didn't erase what he'd done. It didn't bring back the time he'd wasted or the hurt he'd caused. But it was a start. By October 2024, 1 year after Catherine's death, Marcus had completed all his conditions. He'd kept his job and even gotten a promotion. He'd been in therapy for 6 months and was working through his issues with entitlement and instant gratification. He'd logged over 120 hours of volunteer work and had become a regular fixture at the Cancer Support Center. And he'd started rebuilding his relationship with me, slowly but genuinely. On October 19, 2024, the anniversary of Catherine's death, Marcus and I stood together at her grave. "I wish I could go back," he said. "I wish I could have been the son she deserved." "You can't go back," I said. "But you can be the man she hoped you'd become." That night, I had Margaret draft a new estate plan. "When I die, Marcus will inherit everything, but it will be held in a structured trust. He'll receive income from the trust, but the principal will be protected. And every year, a significant portion will be donated to cancer research and patient support in Catherine's name. Marcus won't be as rich as he would have been if he'd just waited patiently and been a decent human being. But he'll be taken care of, and he'll have the opportunity to do good with Catherine's legacy. More importantly, he'll have earned it. Today, as I'm recording this in late October 2025, Marcus and I have dinner once a week, usually over video chat but sometimes in person. He's still working, still in therapy, still volunteering. He's dating that nurse he met, a wonderful woman named Sarah who lost her husband to lymphoma. They're taking things slow, but I can see Marcus is different with her. More thoughtful. More present. The money is still there, sitting in accounts and investments, growing every year. 35 million has become nearly 42 million thanks to smart management and a strong market. But it's not the money that matters anymore. What matters is that I kept my promise to Catherine. I waited to see what kind of man our son would become. And when he failed that test, I didn't give up on him. I gave him a harder test, one that actually meant something. Marcus had to learn that you can't buy character. You can't inherit decency. You can't trust fund your way into being a good person. Those things have to be earned through sacrifice, through showing up, through putting other people first. Catherine knew that Marcus needed to learn that lesson. She knew that handing him millions of dollars while he was still immature and selfish would have destroyed him. He would have burned through it, surrounded himself with users and hangers-on, and ended up empty and alone. Instead, by staying silent about the money, by forcing him to face consequences, by making him work for something that wasn't just handed to him, I gave him the chance to become someone his mother would have been proud of. I look at photos of Catherine every day. Sometimes I imagine what she'd think of how this all turned out. I think she'd be happy. Not about the pain, not about the betrayal, but about the growth. About the son we have now versus the son we were losing. There are still hard days. Marcus and I are rebuilding trust, and that doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes I see flashes of the old entitlement, the old selfishness. But more often, I see genuine growth. I see a man learning to value things that can't be bought. And that's worth more than $35 million. To anyone watching this who thinks staying silent about my wife's inheritance was cruel, let me ask you this: what would have happened if I'd told Marcus about the money right away? Would it have made him a better person? Would it have brought him closer to his mother's memory? Or would it have enabled the worst parts of him to flourish? Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to make them earn what they receive. Not because you're withholding, but because you're investing in who they can become. Catherine was the smartest person I ever knew. She made millions through shrewd investments, but her greatest investment was in her son's character. Even dying, she was thinking about how to save him from himself. Thank God I stayed silent. Thank God I kept my promise. Thank God I gave Marcus the chance to become someone worthy of his mother's love, not just her money. That's the real inheritance. Not the dollars in the account, but the man he's becoming. And that's something you can't put a price on. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts about new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.